They were not scholars or kings, just fishermen, tax collectors, and zealots. Ordinary men, indistinguishable in a crowd. Their hands were rough from work, their lives marked by struggle and simple joys. They had hopes, fears, and dreams, never suspecting their lives were about to change. Into their world stepped Jesus, not with soldiers or a royal decree, but with a simple invitation: follow me. He saw potential where others saw only the mundane. Picture Peter and Andrew casting nets at dawn, when a voice calls them to leave everything behind. It was a call to step out of the familiar and into the unknown. Something in Jesus' voice promised an adventure beyond imagination. This is the beginning of our story, not just theirs but ours. God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. He looks for willing hearts, not perfect people. The disciples were the first to show that an ordinary life placed in God's hands can become a vessel for miracles. Their journey began with a simple choice, a single step of faith. What about you? Would you answer that call? The invitation remains. Follow me. The world changed because they said yes. Ordinary people, extraordinary purpose. Their story is a reminder. Greatness begins with willingness. The path is uncertain, but the destination is divine. The adventure starts with faith. Will you take the first step? When Jesus said, "Follow me," He was inviting them into a new life. For Peter and Andrew, it meant leaving their nets, their security and identity. James and John left their father in the boat, choosing the unknown with Jesus over the comfort of home. Matthew, a tax collector, left his wealth and status behind at a single word. None of them asked for guarantees or details. They saw something in Jesus worth risking everything for. Their willingness was radical. They sacrificed careers, security, and approval for a journey with a homeless teacher. Faith begins with letting go, trusting that God's plan is better than our own. The disciples' first step was the hardest, but it changed everything. They moved from self-made lives to lives of divine purpose. What is God asking you to leave behind? The first step of faith is the most important. It's the step that leads to transformation. The disciples show us, say yes and let God write your story. The journey starts with surrender. Are you ready to take that step? The invitation is still open. The disciples witnessed miracles daily. Water to wine, storms calmed, thousands fed, the blind seen. They saw Jesus' power firsthand, yet their faith often faltered. Even after walking on water, Peter sank when fear took over. They argued about greatness, misunderstood Jesus' mission, and struggled with doubt. Their journey shows us seeing isn't always believing. Faith is a process, not a destination. The disciples' struggles remind us that doubt is part of the journey. Even in the presence of miracles, faith can waver. But Jesus never gave up on them. Neither will He give up on you. Peter the Rock swore loyalty to Jesus but denied Him 3 times in fear. His failure was crushing. He wept bitterly, ashamed and broken. But with Jesus, failure isn't the end. After the resurrection, Jesus sought Peter out, not with condemnation but with restoration. 3 times Jesus asked, "Do you love me?" 1 for each denial. He didn't just forgive Peter, He gave him a new purpose: feed my sheep. Jesus entrusted Peter with leadership, proving grace is greater than failure. God doesn't discard us when we fall. He meets us in our shame and invites us back. Peter's story teaches, our faith isn't defined by perfection but by returning to God's grace. Restoration is always possible. Your worst moment isn't your last chapter. God's love is relentless. He calls us back every time. Will you accept His restoration? Grace rewrites our story. Let it rewrite yours. Before the resurrection, the disciples hid in fear, their dreams shattered. But everything changed when the risen Jesus appeared. He showed them His wounds, ate with them, and taught them. The reality of His victory transformed them. At Pentecost, the Holy Spirit filled them with boldness. Peter, once afraid, now preached fearlessly to thousands. The church was born, not by human courage, but by divine power. All the disciples were changed. They left hiding and proclaimed Jesus everywhere. Their message: Jesus is alive and new life is possible. They were no longer defined by failure, but by the risen Christ. The Holy Spirit empowered them to change the world. Fear was replaced by faith. Their transformation is possible for us too. The same Spirit lives in us. Will you let Him transform you? The disciples' boldness led to conflict, not comfort. They faced arrest, beatings, and even death for their message. Yet, they refused to be silenced. Their faith was tested by fire, imprisonment, martyrdom, rejection. But their joy and resolve never wavered. They endured because they knew the risen Lord. Earthly suffering was nothing compared to eternal glory. Their triumph was faithfulness, not escape. The more they were persecuted, the more the message spread. Their unwavering faith proved the gospel's power. God's strength shone brightest in their weakness. Their story, true victory, is faith that endures. Will you stand firm no matter the cost? Saul of Tarsus was the church's greatest enemy until he met Jesus on the road to Damascus. Blinded by a heavenly light, Saul heard Jesus' voice and was transformed. Ananias, risking everything, obeyed God and helped restore Saul's sight. Saul became Paul, the church's greatest missionary. He endured suffering and persecution for the gospel he once tried to destroy. Paul's story proves no one is beyond God's reach. If God can transform a persecutor into an apostle, he can change any life. Grace rewrites even the hardest stories. Your past doesn't disqualify you. God's power can transform anyone, including you. The disciples' faith was active, not passive. Forged in struggle, it became a world-changing force. They started as ordinary men, but their faith endured every trial. With only their testimony and the Holy Spirit, they launched a movement that changed history. Their legacy. God uses surrendered lives to do extraordinary things. They weren't perfect, just willing. Their strength came from Christ, not themselves. Their faith moved mountains of fear, division, and doubt. God's power is made perfect in weakness. Their story calls us to unwavering faith. Ordinary people, extraordinary impact. What could God do through your faith? The world still needs mountain movers. The disciples' story is an invitation, not just history. Faith isn't about perfection, it's about getting back up and accepting grace. We're called to live boldly, love deeply, and stand firm in our convictions. The same Holy Spirit that empowered them empowers us. We don't rely on our own strength, but on God's limitless power. When you stumble, remember Peter, run back to grace. When you feel weak, remember Paul, lean on God's strength. When you're afraid, ask for the Spirit's boldness. God's promises remain true. I am with you always, you are never alone. Live a life of unwavering faith. The invitation is yours. Will you say yes?